Welcome to this video on President Donald Trump 2025 Conservative Tyranny. So this video is dedicated to the astrology horoscope implications of the United States and that of Donald J. Trump in 2025. And what we can see symbolically from the astrology in regards to the potential of implementing conservative tyranny. So we'll look at the astrology chart of the United States and that of President Donald J. Trump, implying the impact his karmic proclivities, indicated in his astrology chart, have on the United States and the recent and current planetary movements of the major planets, Jupiter through Pluto, and what they portend for Trump's political policies, their impact on the United States. These policies are further being implemented by his recent appointees for his cabinet. And so we'll look at especially the karmic implications associated with his vice president, J.D. Vance, and Pete Hegseth, who today, on January 25th of 2025, was confirmed as Secretary of Defense. And we'll see a correlation from their charts with what I discern as the trend in certain political charts of political opportunism and karmic ruthlessness. So with that said, welcome. I'm Altazar, spiritual astrologer with over 35 years experience. And I'm going to post my contact information briefly for those who are interested in not only readings with me, as I cover all aspects of astrology, including relationship compatibility, career, life purpose, family issues, issues with your children, location and travel astrology. But I'm offering a complimentary free reading for those who have viewed this video and contact me mentioning this and have the opportunity to have that complimentary reading. So here's the contact information. You'll note my email, altazarastrology@gmail.com, or visit my website, www.altazarastrology.com. You know this YouTube channel, and please do subscribe if you find this information helpful and informative and care to be notified when other interesting videos appear. Also, I have over 30 videos already established on this channel that you may find of interest in a whole range of topics associated with astrology. And you'll note here the free introductory reading that I'm offering. So contact me by email or text or schedule to schedule a potential reading. And I, of course, welcome your likes if you find this video interesting and informative. And please do subscribe. So now we'll move ahead and start by looking at the chart of Donald Trump and that of the United States. Now, I will point out, and some of you, subscribers and others, have viewed some of my recent previous videos from the past 6 months when I did one on uh, the karma and character of Donald Trump, as well as that of Kamala Harris. So you might refer back to that to see in more detail. I'm just going to give a brief summary of that here, uh, as it's now associated with the fact that Donald J. Trump is president and impacting the United States. So I'm going to bring up the charts here for Trump and the United States. Take a moment here. And so I'm going to note that Donald Trump has quite a remarkable, I call him Teflon Don, because he has a karma that has enabled him to take advantage of the legal system in the United States. You know, Donald Trump has over 6 bankruptcies from his business history. And also, he has eluded and or evaded uh, prosecutions, especially in recent times, having uh, 34 felony convictions for various types of business fraud, and yet just a slap in the hand in terms of punishment. And so you're seeing here in the chart of Donald Trump uh, this Saturn, or should I say, Sun sign Uranus conjunction in a trine to Jupiter. So that Jupiter is associated with legal issues, and Trump is extraordinarily shrewd and opportunistic when it comes to delaying justice in regards to him through his staff of lawyers and knowing how to push the limits of the legal and now even the political system. Uh, because he does have a very favorable karma here, this Jupiter trine to his Sun and Uranus, in regards to maneuvering and manipulating the political and legal systems. Now, where his hard karma is basically is like many conservatives, and you'll see when I look at the chart of J.D. Vance and that of Pete Hegseth, uh, the charts of many conservatives, and especially those with regressive types of policies, have Saturnian, strong Saturnian aspects. So Saturn conjunct Venus implies someone who puts inordinate emphasis on his socioeconomic and financial status as if you will, a merit badge for his self-worth and his self-centered sense of superiority. Now, we'll also note that Donald Trump has Mars in conjunction with his rising sign in Leo. So that makes him, and the rising sign is his outer character and personality. And Mars is aggressive, assertive, commanding, and in Leo, uh, desirous of being the center of attention and exalted in his stature. Uh, it's Leo is the sign of royalty, so to speak, and Mars has the uh, egoic side to it associated with an aggressive effort towards that elevation. So there we see that the Mars aspect, right on his rising sign of his outer character and personality, makes him certainly, at a minimum, uh, self absorbed and quite charismatic in terms of being the center of attention, as well as quite aggressively assertive and commanding. Now, as I had discussed in a previous video regarding Election Day, November 5th, 2024, here is the chart of Donald Trump on Election Day. Now, at the time when I recorded that video, in terms of the election between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, it was my hope that Kamala Harris would win the election. Yet, from a more objective and unbiased point of view, uh, Kamala Harris had some challenging transits at that time that portended either a tough time if she were elected, or for Donald Trump, as you'll see in this election day chart, his inner ring has his natal chart. The outer ring are where the planets were right on November 5th, 2024. And you'll see that Jupiter in Gemini, in a near conjunction with his sun sign, did bode very well. Remember, I've talked about him being a Jupiterian in his natal chart, that Jupiter trining his sun sign, the perennial optimism he has, the incredible confidence and charisma that he has, especially with the Mars aspect in Leo to his sun sign, that deep, strong, assertive, commanding, and maverick orientation to assert uh, radical, if not unusual, approaches to things with the Uranus aspect here. And and so there we go. We had that Jupiter happening for him. You know, when Jupiter hits your sun sign in anyone's chart, it can be just an incredible time of growth and opportunity. And at that time, yet, I had predicted that if Trump lost the election, there would have been incredibly agitated and very proactive activism on his part and that of his associates to challenge the election, almost to the point of turbulent, if not violent, forms of revolution, comparable to what occurred on January 6th of 2021. Because Uranus, being in this once in a lifetime position in Taurus, was exactly square his Mars and his ascendant, which it still is. Yet there's a different interpretation since he was elected. So, what this implies, and even prior to his election, in terms of his proclaimed strongman policies, would be radical and dramatic implementation of his policies, which I am describing as conservative tyranny. So uh, we'll move ahead here to note that Uranus in the square to the Mars in the ascendant implies a time in a person's life in his energy field of radical agitation towards implementing policies that may have even violent implications, if not uh, vindictive and hostile confrontation with the political system and or establishment political policies. So now we're going to move ahead here and look at the charts for his inauguration. So now you'll be seeing on the screen the chart of the United States in the inner circle here and the planetary positions of Donald Trump's natal chart planets as they are in relationship to the chart of the United States. So I'm first going to talk about this uh, as it implies what can be the implications of Donald Trump's presidency vis-a-vis an effect on the United States. So, first of all, it's worthy to note that Donald Trump's born in the year of the fire dog, 1946. And uh, the area of the chart that is most favorable for some kind of partnership or relationship with anyone in their chart is connected to the seventh house, the house of marriage and long term partnerships. And so it's not uncommon, especially for even just personal partnerships, to have a partner who has their sun sign or Venus or primary planets in the seventh, eighth, or ninth houses. Now, isn't it interesting to note that three recent presidents, including the current one, are all born with sun signs in signs in this area of the chart of the United States? William Jefferson Clinton, Bill Clinton, a Leo. Here he is in this area of the USA chart. George W. Bush, a Cancer. And by the way, both of them born just a month apart from each other in 1946. Here's the sign Cancer in both the seventh and the eighth house. The United States is a Cancerian country. Sun, Jupiter, Venus, and Mercury, all in the sign Cancer, the sign of mothering, the sign of maternality, the sign of here to nurture and offer empowerment and opportunity for people. And then, of course, here we have Gemini right on the cusp of the house of marriage or long term partnerships. Donald Trump is a Gemini, and his sun sign you'll see here is rock solid here in the seventh house of marriage and partnerships. Now, the question is what kind of marriage or partnership does Donald Trump offer to the country of the United States, along with other planetary positions here? Well, I would venture to explore or assert the point here about the karma of the United States. Mars in Gemini in a square to Neptune in Virgo in the chart of the United States implies that our country at times can be motivated or led by more egoic, ideological, political activism that is contrary to the greater democratic values of our Constitution. So you see, I don't see it as a coincidence that Donald Trump's sun sign is virtually conjunct and exact to the Mars and exact 22 square to the Neptune in the chart of the United States. To me, that implies a relationship, or Donald Trump having a relationship with the Chart of the United States that is based on, as Mars tends to symbolize, a narcissistic, egoistic ideology that is contrary to and even uh, detrimental to the foundational ideologies of democracy and progress for this country, and can be a very shrewdly manipulative propagandist in terms of affecting mass consciousness in the country towards policies that might be uh, overly aggressive and or uh, overly self-protective, like nationalism, to the detriment of more cooperative relationships with the world at large, or more universalistic to the population, the general population of the country. Now it's further demonstrated by, and I've talked about this in my earlier videos, the trend of the planets at this time, in which Pluto has made its 240-year plus return in the chart of the United States. Here's Pluto in the chart of the United States, taken 240 plus years to come around to its birth position. And that position, when the country was founded, was associated with the attempt by the colonists and the revolutionaries in the colonies, George Washington, Patrick Henry, Thomas Jefferson, etc., to overthrow the yoke of political economic tyranny of King George of England and the exploitation of the resources and economy of the colonies or the United States. So, in other words, the revolutionaries of the foundation in our country uh, were activated to overthrow a plutocracy, an elite, the wealthy, the monarchists. Now, isn't it interesting how the Pluto return of the United States is now highlighting, and many and clearly upfront politicians are referring to what is becoming an oligarchy in the United States, especially the tech giants like Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, and others, uh, whose consolidated billionaire wealth is more than that of over half the population of the working class in the United States. And so, uh, who is working towards uh, more of a democratization of our economy and tax policies that are justified to uh, enhance the social services and embolden the working and middle class towards uh, upward mobility and aspiration? Or is an agent of the elite billionaire class and the extraordinarily wealthy? Well, uh, if we had seen aspects favoring Pluto here, we would see there's policies towards that direction. But what we do see is on the opposite side here, in terms of the eighth house associated with the financial institutions and the financial resources associated with the stock market, lending institutions, mortgages, and investments associated with the billionaire class. Donald Trump's Saturn and Venus are straddling the Mercury of the United States in the eighth house, implying that it's quite possible that he indirectly or in one way, shape, or form is a favorable agent for the oligarchic billionaire class. Now, that's not conclusive per se, but you know, as all astrology implies, there are tendencies that are indicated in a chart, and then those tendencies can be corroborated by actual events and policies. And so when we look at the position of the planets on Inauguration Day, that's the 20th of January here. That's where the planets were on that day. And related to Donald Trump's chart. We come back to the point that Uranus still in Taurus, going retrograde back and forth over his midheaven, the cusp of the 10th house, symbolic of his service and political position with the public, economically and politically. We see it's still in a square to Mars on Inauguration Day and will move back again to squaring his rising sign. And again, as I described, that can be a proclivity or an agitated inclination for an individual to be engaging in turbulent, if not even vindictive, and sometimes even violent political activism, especially in confrontation with the so-called establishment. Now, what we see here is in his chart of the seventh house, that of marriage or partnerships or connection in a partnership with a country, Saturn being in Pisces in his seventh house implies a time of testing, if not serious frustration or challenge in regards to his relationship with the country. Because Saturn in Pisces is directly squaring his Uranus in his house, the 10th house of public service and administrative, authoritative ascension to positions of power. And what that implies, it's just no coincidence from this point of view why there was the snowstorm and extreme cold on his inauguration day as to why it had to be canceled outdoors and brought indoors. Saturn has to do with restriction and challenge to his radical direction here. And so what we saw after the inauguration and establishment of his presidency was an avalanche of executive orders. Here's your Uranus squaring Mars of complete and almost dramatically intense attempts to overthrow the established order of many policies, especially that of the Biden administration and or even centrist Republicans. And so we're now going to take a look at where the planets were vis-a-vis the chart of the United States on Inauguration Day. So now you're seeing the chart of the United States and Donald Trump comparison that I've just spoken of. But we're also now looking at the chart of the United States here in this inner ring and where the planets were on January 20th, 2025. And so, what is most extraordinarily noteworthy is you see the planet Mars at 24 degrees Cancer retrograde, exactly in that conjunction with Mercury in the eighth house, as I talked about, the house associated with the investment class, the billionaire class, those who are associated with controlling the financial structure of the country. And opposite Pluto, and noting that the Sun and Pluto are in the second house. Second house is the house of bringing uh, the economy to uh, the meritorious opportunity for everyday working and middle class people. And so, again, here we see that on Inauguration Day, uh, Mars conjunct the Mercury. Is it any wonder or a coincidence that right behind Donald Trump in his inauguration ceremony were Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, and Mark Zuckerberg, three of the prominent uh, billionaire oligarchs? And this showing this Mars Mercury opposite Pluto, uh, that they're essentially Trump being the agent of this oligarchic class, being a billionaire himself, uh, is inclined to declare war on the working class and or to promulgate policies that support the elite, the oligarchs, and radical conservatism that is about dismantling government uh, and reducing expenditures, especially for social services or services that support everyday people. And we see that the planet Uranus here is in and will be moving to square the moon of the United States. That implies some kind of radical challenge to social welfare programs. Now, so you see here Mars at 24 degrees Cancer vis-a-vis the United States chart. And then we see that Donald Trump has Venus and Saturn 23 to 25 degrees Cancer straddling Mars. Mars is virtually right there in the position associated with in Donald Trump's consciousness with status of financial gain opportunity and, if you will, exploitation. Now, as we move along here, we're going to see the implications associated with this kind of ideology. So, remembering the influence here that Uranus continues to exert in Donald Trump's chart of the conjunction with the 10th house of career and public service in the square to Mars and the ascendant, as I talked of earlier, the uh, the fact that he has been able to evade the consequences of his illicit actions associated with his felony convictions and also using his manipulative uh, exposition of the Biden's administration's prosecution inclinations that he has declared that the Justice Department had been weaponized against him. That's how he rationalized and justified uh, evading a sense of consequence for his outright illicit actions, including that of the January 6th insurrection. And so that is very connected in his natal chart to the fact that he has Mercury in Cancer and a square to Neptune. That aspect in a person's chart can imply the proclivity to being essentially a pathological liar who will say anything to defend and justify their self-righteous position. And so what we are seeing with this Uranus square to Mars and the ascendant is at this time, and of course this is dated for the inauguration day and soon thereafter, uh, his vindictive and essentially aggressive, even turbulently uh, revolutionary, if not radical, conservative tyranny. And what I mean by that is that his executive orders, uh, you know, dozens of them, I'm going to highlight some of those radical and even overly uh, regressive orders that have been even challenged politically. Uh, One, for example, ending birthright citizenship for uh, immigrants who have children born in the United States who have up to this time and constitutionally valid to be automatic American citizens. There's one. His direct ending and attempt to end through the Department of Education and otherwise diversity, equity, and inclusion policies. His declaration of defining people as their biological sex, man or woman, and undermining all the efforts associated with tolerance and acceptance of gender definitions, such as transgenders. His intensification of immigrant deportations, not just towards criminal uh, immigrants, but threatening just others, including the DACA, who are children born in this country of potential illegal immigrants. His sending the military to the border to add enforcement in terms of securing entrance into the country. His ending of the United States participation in the Paris Climate Accord. So he is inclined to just totally overthrow efforts that have been oriented to address climate change and the severe uh, and dramatic weather events that have destroyed and have decimated areas of our country, including in North Carolina and Florida, and especially recently in California and Los Angeles with the fires. Uh, so he is also inclined to end support for electric vehicles and as being an extension or puppet of the oil companies, uh, trumpeting drill, baby, drill, trying to expand the already glutted uh, production of oil and gas in this country, uh, and ending the inclination towards the production of more uh, econ- ecologically friendly uh, vehicles addressing climate change, threatening tariffs on trading partners such as Canada and Mexico, withdrawing from NATO and ending, tremendous years of international cooperation with the European Union and other countries. But what has been even more radical and inclined to reinforce almost a fascist uh, civilian support force for him had been his recent pardoning of 1,500 January 6th rioters, including those, or the January 6th demonstrators and insurrectionists, including those engaged in violent attacks on the police that resulted in one way or another in the death of at least five police and law enforcement officials around the Capitol. And his most recent firing of 12 inspector generals, who are those assigned through the various cabinet and offices throughout the government to monitor and scrutinize the use of resources and evolve more efficiency and or reduce waste. So when I talk about an individual, in this case, with such power, and it has a Uranus square to their ascendant and rising sign, you know that this kind of energy is also what fuels terrorists who are, uh, let's say, frustrated political activists in other countries who turn to violence to challenge the establishment order. Uh, so let's move ahead here to talk about his staff of those who he has assigned as cabinet members. So I'm not going to dwell on many of them, but I'm just going to give examples here of the karmic implications of the proclivity towards regressiveness and even ruthlessness found in charts. Now, I'd done an exposition on his failed nominee and for Attorney General, and so now we're looking at who was nominated and confirmed today, along with his Vice President J.D. Vance, who swore him in. So let's take a look at their charts. So now on the screen, you're seeing the charts of J.D. Vance, Pete Hegseth, and lo and behold, Adolf Hitler. So what I'm implying here is that, it's just not black and white as to the quality or attributes of people. People are certainly a mix of positive karma and positive predispositions towards their career, profession, and service. So we can't just take a broad brush and say someone's good or someone's bad. Uh, but we can look at tendencies that may predominant or be predominant in a person's chart. And so when we look at and I talked about J.D. Vance in comparison to Tim Walls in a previous video in terms of karma and the character potentials. Now, J.D. Vance certainly is an intelligent guy and has a deep sensibility in his communications. That Mercury trining is Jupiter, and that uh, he has this Venus in Leo and a trine to his Neptune, and so it shows that as in a private way, he's also a caring and compassionate guy in certain respects. However, uh, and this is often found in the charts of people in the military or in law enforcement, and both J.D. Vance and Hegseth, of course, have history. Vance having been in the Marines. Why is that? What is the karmic predisposition for someone who is willing to go out and fight, die, and or kill? Uh, well, it's often has to do with Mars, the planet of war, the planet of aggression, the planet of uh, egoic, assertive command and dominance. And lo and behold, look at this. Mars in Scorpio, there in the square to his Venus. There's a side of that anger there. Uh, but even more so, what drives certain people to accept not only an inclination to use force and violence, as here Mars squaring Venus implies, uh, especially uh, as many conservatives these days tend to uh, allow the ends to justify the means. In other words, lies or subversive or manipulative tactics to achieve some larger goal in their vision for the country or whatever. And so Saturn in Scorpio in a square to his sun sign, that's known as the Napoleonic complex. That implies someone who may have a ruthless proclivity towards the ambition of ascending to a position of power. And uh, as I imply in terms of the charts of, you find more in the charts of conservatives and Republicans, uh, the inclination towards authoritarianism and or more regressive uh, religious or uh, cultural proclivities. Now we look at the chart of Pete Hegseth. Now, again, in forensic astrology, where I have promulgated the point of view that people who are accused of certain crimes or abusive or negative behaviors can have that corroborated by looking at the karma in their astrology chart to see if they have a predisposition towards that behavior. Not that they've acted it out. They may have worked in the personal growth, healing, and or embraced some religious morality to transcend that tendency. But when you hear about uh, the accusations made towards Pete Hegseth of violent behavior in his relationships with women, Moon associated with women and his mother, and even a diatribe of his mother's email or uh, strong condemnation of him in regards to his treatment of women. Moon square Venus, alienation even from his mother, uh, who retrenched and maybe she was paid off, who knows. But then we see uh, the planet Neptune accused of alcoholism, accused of showing up even at Fox News, Friends and whatever his show was, and Fox News showing up drunk or at least uh, with alcohol in his breath, and having acted out at various parties and social events in a rather disruptive and belligerent manner. Uh, Neptune is the ruler of alcoholism and or proclivities towards escapism, especially in regards to the Sun and Venus, and also adverse to the Moon, which implies a proclivity of his need for drugs, alcohol, and or uh, forms of sexual escapism uh, to cope with stress and challenges in his life. This T squared, the Sun, Venus, Neptune, and the Moon, is clearly a forensic astrological proclivity, behavioral proclivity towards abuse of women and or escapism through drugs and alcoholism. But when we come down to conservatism, we look at again, lo and behold, how about that? Pete Hegseth has Saturn squaring his sun sign. But not only Saturn, he has Mars squaring his sun sign. So Mars squaring the sun implies those whose fundamental identity is very associated with uh, anger, uh, an abusive experience with one's father, or a negative authoritarian experience with one's father that lends towards him being inclined to be domineering, aggressive, and or abusive and even violent. Uh, in the sports world, you have many boxers and or certain football players who have Mars squared the sun. Uh, Definitive uh, common aspect in even law enforcement or the military. Those willing to use violence or as force and want to learn how to channel it properly. So it can be channeled properly. But then the Saturn square the sun, like J.D. Vance, implies of the almost due to the father wound that they experience, the lack of nurturing support and deep empathy for a positive role modeling for identity development. The Saturn square the sun is then the ruthless, sometimes unscrupulous ambition on the part of this individual to ascend opportunistically any avenue to elevate his socioeconomic and political status in the world. And so, well, and again, the ends justify the means for this kind of individual. Now, when we look at the chart of Adolf Hitler, you see actually Adolf Hitler, not unlike Donald Trump, has Jupiter trining his sun sign. So, in a certain respect, Adolf Hitler had a more favorable karma associated with his drive towards elevating his identity stature vis a vis his sense of patriotism for his country. However, not unlike J.D. Vance, Mars square Venus, here we have Mars conjunct Venus, the intensity or proclivity towards lack of empathy or violence in relationships. But there we have our old friend Saturn, and especially Saturn in the house of politics is the slow, hard, grinding, ruthless effort on the part of an individual to ascend to a political position of power and authority through violence or whatever means, Saturn square. So a Mars Venus conjunction squaring Saturn is found in the charts of uh, sometimes serial killers, but also those who are opportunistically ruthless in their inclination to use or justify the use of violence to attain their political ascension. And again, here we see Mars squaring the sun sign here. So that is directly uh, someone who's willing to be in a position of force or channeling the use of violence with the Saturn square, opportunistically ascending in a position of authority. So I can conclude here by saying that we need to really pray for how the policies that will be implemented by Donald Trump pan out, especially in his first year in office. And just to summarize that, we're back again looking at the placements of the planets on Inauguration Day around Donald Trump's chart, and also looking at a listing of the movement of Jupiter through Pluto over the course of 2025. And what stands out pretty dramatically is Saturn squaring his moon. Saturn in Pisces is going to be moving ahead to square his moon and his sun sign over the next 3 or 4 months. So there's that through March. And that implies a very strong conflict with the established order in the political hierarchy, that he is going to be challenged all over, from legal challenges from the states to the Democrats in Congress, both in the House of Representatives and the Senate, uh, in attempts to obstruct, if not completely eliminate, some of his executive orders. It also implies that his health may be somewhat diminished, if not jeopardized, due to the excessive stress he may be under over the next 3 months. That Saturn often can indicate by having taken on too much or not uh, adequately apportioning his time and activities along with adequate rest or balance in his life. But what further stands out really for the entire year, even we see here in December and January of 26, Uranus squaring his Mars. So this Uranus on his midheaven in a square to Mars and his ascendant. Here it is, Uranus square Mars, Uranus and Saturn squaring Uranus even in his chart right now, showing his, concerted effort to take control of many political realms in the country. Uh, and the Jupiter conjunct Uranus, Uranus squaring Mars again, and Uranus squaring his ascendant in June through August. So it is certainly a Uranian year predominantly for him, unfortunately adverse to the more uh, positive and nurturing elements of the mainstream economics of the middle and working class. And so I would say that there could be a rise in 2026 of of the beginning of a movement that may be associated with a revolutionary realignment of the structure of the Democratic Party and other mutually uh, allied political forces to try to uh, revamp and uh, return Congress to the Democratic and or progressive or even centrist Republican elements. So that concludes this video. I wish you all well. I wish for your subscription if you find this interesting and would like to hear more about upcoming interesting expositions on politicians, criminals, uh, celebrities, and other topics for personal growth. And please do like this video if you found it informative.